Okay, let's do this. Excellent. Thank you so much, Nina. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. It is June 3rd. This is our department weekly meeting. I'm Kristen Evidall, the department director. We're going to give everyone just a few minutes to get into today's presentation or webinar. So we'll start promptly at 8:35. So thanks again for joining us. And I'm going to mute my device and we'll be back at 8:35 to get going. All right. Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Kristen Evidall. I am the director of the Mendocino County Cannabis Department. This is our weekly update meeting. And I want to thank Nina Holloway for joining us today, helping with the facilitation, the streaming, and keeping us on track and our technology moving forward. So we're going to go ahead and jump into today's presentation and keep going. So we'll be covering some updates, and then our meeting today is a little bit different than how we've previously formatted meetings. Last week, we discussed sensitive species habitat review and Appendix G checklist and how those pieces tie together. There were a heck of a lot of questions that came in via the chat feature last week, we didn't really get to many of them. So this week is an effort to, or a meeting designed to specifically address those questions that came in that we didn't get to. So we're not going to fully go through the same presentation we went through last week, although this is the same presentation with the questions that we received kind of spliced into the presentation. So we will be really focusing on the questions that we received last week and doing our best to address them today. There will be time for additional questions. And again, just folks, you can use the Q&A feature to ask questions throughout the course of the conversation. I just want to set a little bit of expectation. It's pretty hard for me to manage the presentation and the material that we've prepared and keep track on all the questions. So I'll do my best, but sometimes it's just too much to manage presenting and tracking the questions, especially as they start really populating, they go off my screen. So we will spend some time, again, going through questions in the Q&A feature once we get through the initial part of the presentation. So time will be made for public comment and additional questions. And then we're going to do our best to make sure that we really do address future agenda items. Last week, we just blew that off. I'm so incredibly sorry, but there were so many questions and the conversation was so robust. I wanted to try to get through as many of your questions as possible. So I'm hoping today we'll make some time for future agenda items so we can hear what folks are needing to learn more about. All right, quick reminder on how to participate. Please, if you have a question that comes up during the course of the presentation, feel free to use the Q&A feature. There's either in the bottom of your screen or at the top of your screen, there should be a toolbar. And it has a little like comic chat box icon that says Q&A under it. If you click on that, it will open up a separate panel that you can type questions into. When you type those questions, they come to the presenters who are Nina and I. The rest of the group doesn't see those questions unless we type a response answer to your question. Then the entire group or attendees will be able to see that response and the original question asked. So anytime during the presentation, please, you can, like I said, enter your question into the Q&A box. When we do get to verbal questions and public comment, which time will be made for that, and we're going to ask folks to use the raise hand feature to get into the comment or question queue. That is located in the same toolbar as the Q&A feature. And it really just looks like a little hand. Click the hand, it raises, click the hand again, it lowers. If you're calling in or not on the Zoom app for some reason, you can use *9 to raise your hand and lower your hand at any time during the meeting. And then we'll mute and unmute. For those of you who do choose to make verbal comment, you can unmute your device if you're using the Zoom app by hovering on your identity screen or the screen that is you. And then the mute button should be in the upper right-hand corner. It's blue. It may also be in your toolbar. So just keep that in mind. And if you are calling in, not on the Zoom app, you can use the *6 to mute and unmute. And we'll repeat these, so you don't have to remember them. I'm just putting it out there right now, and we'll repeat them when we go to public comment. Some important dates to be aware of. June 3rd, today we're doing our weekly public meeting from 8:30 to 10. But we've gone ahead and scheduled weekly public meetings for the rest of the month for every Friday, which we've identified here on the slide. And then also just a reminder that we'll be doing our monthly LEAP meeting on June 15th from 3:30 to 5. So that's the third Wednesday of the month. Some general updates. Just a reminder that we do have counter hours Monday through Friday from 10 to 4. We are closed from noon to 1 for lunch. Excuse me. Starting in July, we're still moving forward with technical assistance meetings. We'll have cannabis department staff at those meetings and also state agencies. And we're going to do this a little different than I had anticipated. We're going to follow DFW's model. I think it's a good opportunity for folks to meet with all of the agencies in one fell swoop and ask questions specific to their project and how to proceed. And so we'll be scheduling, it sounds like, every other Friday for technical assistance meetings. They will be long days for staff and agencies because we'll be offering technical assistance from what we're planning right now is 8 a.m. to about 5 p.m. And it'll be by appointment only. So we'd like to, and we'll get it together to put out some appointment schedules, and we'll do direct invitations to applicants, permit holders, and their agents. And these are going to be specific opportunities for applicants, permit holders, and their agents. We aren't going to be scheduling appointments for, say, the public who wishes to apply. That might come at a later date. These are really specifically designed to allow AG holders to come ask the questions they need about their specific project, work through any of their questions with any of the agencies so we can get everyone moving forward to the best of our ability. The meetings will be in person. So, and they'll be scheduled around the county. So we're looking at multiple venues to make sure that we, hopefully get into Laytonville, Willits, Covelo, out to the coast, Ukiah, and hopefully down to Hopland. We will make sure that we have Wi-Fi so that county staff has the ability to look up your application materials. And we will also be utilizing Teams while we're in these meetings. So if we need to, say, stream in, right, representative of Fish and Wildlife or the Water Board, for example, we can do that and have that specified or that personalized assistance available for applicants. And so I think these will be really great. I know it's a little bit different. We'll continue public meetings on the Fridays in between the technical assistance meetings. And as soon as we have venues and schedule dates, we will definitely start pushing that information out to folks so that we can start scheduling appointments. And we might also do a little bit of a survey so we know exactly or kind of have an idea of what your questions might be. We'll also be offering some grant assistance at these meetings. So you can come with your application, you can come with your grant materials, and we'll spend an hour with you going through answering your questions. So just look forward to those, and hopefully those will be super helpful in getting folks continuing them moving forward and getting them kind of over the hump into permits and annual licenses. Okay, so a little bit about formatting here. What we did for this presentation, and I know it's a little bit different, the format's maybe a little wonky, so I apologize. On each of these slides that we've prepared or that we've added to last week's presentation, your questions are in italic and our response is below. So we're just going to dive in and see how it goes. So questions related to Appendix G that came up last week. I think I've got them all in here. And so when will planners that were already working on Appendix G applications get to resume those reviews? So again, we're hoping for September with all Appendix Gs, right? So folks who were working with a assigned planner to conduct the review of their Appendix G, we're hoping that once we've completed training of our staff and hopefully gotten some contract planners in place, and we've gotten through all of the corrections portal reviews and the initial corrections that we need to send, corrections letters that we'll need to send to those who are in good standing, we'll be able to get back to reviewing those Appendix Gs that we have already started. And so will planners that were assigned to applicants for Appendix G review get to still work with the same applicant, or is there a possibility the applicant's planner will change as new planners have been hired? It's highly likely that if an Appendix G was already assigned and the review was started by a planner, that we'll continue to keep that Appendix G under review with the same planner. However, we did have a couple planners who had started Appendix Gs leave over the course of the last year, transition to other positions. So in those instances, we'll be obviously reassigning those Appendix Gs to someone to review, but they will be in the front of the review line. So if you were, say, assigned to Rob and it wasn't completed, we've gone through and we've been combing out Rob's projects, just as an example, from his files, and then putting them into the queue for assignment. And they have back dates on them. So to the best of our ability, we're backdating them to the point where we received those applications and sent them to Rob. So just as an example, those of you who had started working on your Appendix G with Rob or potentially Alora will be reassigned, but you're in the front of that reassignment line, so to speak, or the assignment line. Appendix Gs should be reviewed retroactively from the date they went into the queue. Anything less is completely unfair to proactive permit holders. So we will do our very best to assign Appendix G submissions in the order that they were received. However, it does make a ton of sense for streamlining purposes to make sure that if we have a renewal that we're opening up and conducting a review on, and there's an Appendix G pending or in the queue, that Appendix G gets reviewed at the same time as that renewal. This will really make for some significant ease in streamlining. So we can't guarantee that Nina's Appendix G is going to be reviewed before Kristen's, even if it came in before Kristen's, because my renewal might be before Nina's renewal, so to speak. So my Appendix G would get sandwiched into that renewal application and assigned at the same time. So it's one review process or one kind of opening of that application. And I think this will help the applicants as well, because, man, what a little bit of a pain in the butt it might be if Nina reviews my renewal and then 4 weeks later, my Appendix G comes up and now I've got a whole other dialogue going back and forth with the department. And then what if that Appendix G doesn't fully match the renewal, and then we have to readdress what's in the permit files. Let's just do it all in one fell swoop is what we're proposing here. Technical assistance, yes, we are talking about technical assistance for LEAP applicants. So LEAP applicants, if you have questions about your grant application, filling out a future grant application for September, we will also be available to answer those questions. Okay, on to the next slide here. Sorry, it's changed screens. Reminder, deadlines for provisional license issuance. So since our cultivators are 10,000 square feet or less, the cultivators in Mendocino County have until June 30th to apply for a new provisional license. If that provisional license is going to be issued by the September 30th, 2022 deadline for new provisional license issuance. There is another extension on timelines for new provisional licenses, and that is for those who have local equity certification or eligibility. So that gives folks a whole nother year almost to get that provisional license if they are eligible for the equity program here in the county. All right, alignment. This slide's from last week, but I'm going to repeat it simply because I think it's a good reminder. So we are working diligently with the state and the applicants to ensure that there's alignment between local permitting and state licensing. So cannabis application and permit alignment with current activities is super important, right? We want to make sure that you have the right application or permit for the activities that you're conducting, and that you also have the correct license for the activities that you're conducting. Also, building permits, please do pursue your building permits. It is not legal to utilize unpermitted structures for the purpose of cannabis-related activities. It's actually a denying offense. It's in the denial section of the ordinance. So please do proceed with wrapping up your building permits and moving those forward so we can finalize your project with you. And so additionally, application materials must be consistent and aligned throughout the application packet. This will become more apparent why, right, as we go through the presentation, but also when we get to the end of the presentation, we talk about the materials that we're going to be sharing with California Department of Fish and Wildlife if your application requires a referral to Cdfw. And so it's really crucially important that we have alignment, okay? This is kind of the key word here is alignment. Alignment with performance standards, alignment with materials between your activities or what your project scope is and our application or permit packet here, alignment between local permitting and state licensing. Okay, questions related to local and state alignment, because we had some questions come up in the chat. So a little bit of a long question here. I'm going to do my best to not slaughter it. I tried to keep the questions just about as true to what came in as possible, and corrected some typos and some grammatical things, but hopefully folks recognize their questions because I didn't change them too much. So if an applicant applied for a state license to properly align local and state activities, right, because say they switched cultivation styles, but the portal status resulted in the state not processing the new state license, and in the meantime, the existing old state license expired, how will the county treat that applicant in terms of being in or out of compliance? So breaking this up into some chunks, the state is still processing applications, even though someone's in the portal. They just are not issuing first-time provisional licenses to folks who are in the portal. They're holding that application until the county verifies that that application has been completed through the portal, right? So the department is going to continue to process the applicant's correction portal submission because we have the ability to verify that you have an application on file. And we did a lot of kind of baking of that verification, so to speak. So before all of you corrected or completed your correction portal submissions, we went through based on the state's lists and made kind of a master list of all of the AG numbers we have that are active and put whether you have a verified provisional license or a provisional application on a list with your AG numbers. So we already have a verification process in place to ensure that the application information that you submitted is attached to your AG number as we're doing these reviews through the corrections portal. And if you say, give us something new, we have a list of active applications or valid applications that are open with the state and under review. And we would just verify that application. If you submitted a new application, we would just verify that with our list. So we would help you move forward. And then once again, when we complete all of the corrections portal reviews, we will be sending a list of those completed applicants or those AG numbers to the state, and the state will release the hold on those applications that are pending. And they'll proceed forward. If there's no deficiencies, they'll proceed forward into an issued license. If there's deficiencies that are not related to the corrections portal, you'll have to manage those deficiencies before you're eligible for a license. But that's the response to that question. Okay, this is not a new slide. We talked about this last week. This is kind of just an overview of sensitive species habitat review and the materials we use to conduct that review. Now, we're going to go on to the next slide because there's some questions that came up about the maps and the materials we use for review, and I want to address those questions. So how does MCD determine what maps should be used for this process? So when the policy was developed between county staff and California Department of Fish and Wildlife in 2022, the checklist was also developed as part of that policy. And that checklist, specifically the performance standards checklist, does include review section that lists these resources. Department of Fish and Wildlife's BIOS viewer. We use this for the California Natural Diversity Database review, for spotted owl observation review from California streams, for wetlands, for floodplain, for rare vegetation, right? And to conduct vegetation modification review, because the BIOS platform gives us aerial imagery, NAPE imagery specifically, dating back, I believe, to about 2014, but definitely 2016, 2018, and 2020 are all in that platform as far as NAPE imagery. So we're using that platform to help understand vegetation modification and potentially identify on a separate conversation any violation of tree clearing, the tree clearing prohibition. So the BIOS platform, the USFWS IPAC platform, USGS Soils Map platform, and the PBS1 map platforms are all referenced in that Exhibit A, or sensitive species performance standards checklist. And so we as planners or department staff have to answer questions specific to these platforms in that checklist, which are related to the performance standards that we reviewed last week that are also still present in this presentation. So what is the bare minimum of requirements that can be reviewed, and can MCD just do that? The bare minimum of requirements includes review of all of the items on the performance standards checklist, and it's exactly what the MCD is doing. They're going through, staff is going through and reviewing all of those items on that checklist, right? That is the agreed upon checklist to conduct the sensitive species habitat review. The sensitive species habitat review and those performance standards are based on the programmatic mitigated negative declaration. All right. Oh, okay. So if you recently had your permit renewed or issued, can it be assumed that your project meets all performance standards in the checklist? No, it can't be assumed that unless you've completed your sensitive species habitat review, right? So this is the department's tool, primary tool for verifying compliance with those performance standards. And when we suspect or believe that someone is out of compliance with a performance standard, or we don't know the status of that compliance with the performance standard, we refer the project to California Department of Fish and Wildlife to assist us with that review. So the only time you can really assume that you're meeting all those performance standards is when the sensitive species habitat review has been completed, and the comments that come back either from the department or Department of Fish and Wildlife are that the project will result in less than significant impacts to the environment. Okay, performance standard checklist. This is in response to, I don't know, kind of tidbits of questions that came in and comments that we saw. So it kind of addresses a broad range of concerns that I feel like came up at the last meeting, or that's what we're attempting to do here. So just really clarifying how the checklist works and what it means if an applicant or permit holder receives a no or an unknown, right, check box on that checklist for a performance standard. So the performance standard checklist, also known as Exhibit A internally, is a review guidance document meant to identify the need for further review of the project by the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. A no or unknown check does not mean the application or permit is slated for denial. It simply means that the department staff will be sending the project to Cdfw for further review. And Cdfw's review does not put the application or the permit at risk of denial. What we see come back from Cdfw is that they really have been focused on keeping folks in the program and trying to get them into compliance. So they often bring back or send back comments or recommendations for the project or the applicant and the permit holder to help ensure or move the permit holder or applicant into compliance with that performance standard. So it is possible that the project can't come into compliance with the performance standard, which means there would be a denial. But the very first place to start here is really working with the applicant and Cdfw to try to find resolution to bring that project into compliance with the performance standard. And sometimes those pieces are hard, right? If you're in a floodplain and you have a bunch of structures, we'll talk about this a little bit more, and you really want those structures for your cultivation site, but they aren't allowed in the floodplain, sometimes there's not a great way to rearrange that project into what you had hoped it would be as an applicant or permit holder. So, but this is not an instant denial scenario here, right? This is, we have questions, the staff has questions about whether or not this project meets the performance standards. We send it over to California Department of Fish and Wildlife for further consideration. And then they often, almost always, if they don't just issue a less than significant impact comment back, there's always recommendations, right, to help that project move into full compliance with those performance standards. And it's really up to the applicant to work through those if they want to move the project forward. Okay, we all saw this last week. I'm not going to go through these one by one, but we're going to just keep going till we get to some questions like this one. So some questions about performance standard number 3, which performance standard number 3 reads, project footprint is not expanded and is not proposed for expansion. So I think it warrants repeating this. We had at least one person let us know that they got interrupted, that they missed this, and they were hoping we would repeat it. So we're going to have a little conversation about it now. Applicants and permit holders who are eligible to submit a contiguous expansion affidavit may be exempted from this performance standard. So if you expanded within 200 feet of, in a contiguous manner, I should say, within 200 feet of an original cultivation site or cultivation related structure even, you may be eligible to file a contiguous expansion affidavit, which would exempt you from this performance standard if that contiguous expansion affidavit is completed and accepted by the department. So if you have expanded or say are proposing expansion and we're ready to do the SSHR review, we would say no or unknown on this and it would go out for referral. And this is not a prohibition on expansion. It is a trigger. So if there's been expansion that's non-contiguous and not covered by a CEA, DFW is asking us to refer that project to them for review. Okay, so this is definitely not saying expansion equals denial. So just want to be really clear there. For more information about sensitive species habitat review and filing a contiguous expansion affidavit, please go to our website. There's a sensitive species habitat review page. You can find that in the left-hand green kind of toolbar on the website, but you can also click through from the presentation to get there. Nina will be posting these slides after we get done, and I think we are a little backed up on slides, so she's got a couple posts she's going to do today, so you should have access to these slides by close of business today. Some questions came up about standard number 4. So performance standard number 4 reads, grading, tree removal, or vegetation removal is not proposed, nor has occurred beyond what existed on January 1st of 2016. And then the first question that came up about this was, wasn't there an acknowledgement of January 1st, 2016 as the wrong date for purposes of the SSHR and other analysis required under the MND, excluding proof of prior cultivation? The date should be, according to this comment, November 7, 2016, which is the date the MND was finalized. So I don't have a great answer for this one, so I'm just going to give you the answer I got. So if there was an acknowledgement, it predates me and I am not aware of it. The review documents used by the department were developed and approved by county staff and CDFW per the joint policy and finalized in 2020. So this has been approved again by county staff and CDFW. If there was a need or a desire to change the date by extending it for 11 months, so to speak, from January 1st to November 7th, that would need to be renegotiated between county staff and DFW. And I don't know that there's really, as far as the review is concerned, much difference between January and November in how these reviews are conducted. I don't know that it really poses much difference, at least not from our review perspective. So I'm going to leave it there because I just don't have better answers or additional information at this time on that one. What is the difference between tree removal and vegetation modification? So tree removal, I would say, right, specifically refers to the tree clearing prohibition that's established by Chapter 10A17, subsections 040 and 090T. So this is where you'll find the tree clearing prohibition that is stated in the ordinance, referencing commercial species, true oaks and tan oaks. And then vegetation modification refers to the modification of vegetation, including trees, and is a performance standard that we're reviewing for, that was agreed upon when the SSHR policy was developed. There's also some sensitive species of vegetation, especially as you get closer to the coast, that is of specific concern to DFW, such as Monterey cypress and pygmy cypress. There's a few things here that we're reviewing for. And when we see vegetation modification and we don't know what it is, what the vegetation is that was modified, we're going to click check either no or unknown on this performance standard, so DFW can do further review on this. Okay, next section of performance standards, and then we have a question on standard 6. Standard 6 reads, project meets the following stream and wetland setbacks for cultivation sites and associated infrastructure. A minimum of 150 feet from perennial streams and wetlands, and a minimum of 50 feet from intermittent streams, measured from the outer edge of the riparian vegetation or top of the bank, whichever is greater. These areas should be identified and maintained as non-disturbance buffers. So the first question that came up about this says, there are grandfathered and grandmothered, wanted a little more space on here, sorry, setbacks from water features if the applicant participated in the original North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board's program. Can we please be sure to include that information in the guidance materials and ensure that staff are aware of those grandfather issues? The performance standard guidance material is the performance standard guidance material. And again, if we don't know whether or not someone is meeting the appropriate 50 to 150 foot setback, we're going to say unknown, and we're going to ask DFW to verify whether or not the project is meeting the performance standard. This is not, well, I don't know, or staff says, no, they aren't meeting this, and then we just deny the application, right? So I want to just emphasize that our staff is not determining the difference between perennial streams and intermittent streams. So it's also, we also, in a lot of cases, don't see the buffers on the site plans that we receive. So when folks put the streams or the waterways on the site plans because it's not required on the guidance doc, we oftentimes don't have applicants and permit holders or agents including those buffers. So it's a lot of times this is somewhat unknown for staff, and so it triggers a referral. That referral does include your water board paperwork. So if there's some sort of grandfathering that occurs, that would likely be in your water board paperwork, which goes to DFW, Cdfw, as part of that referral. So it would be the review of Cdfw looking at any kind of grandfathering that may have occurred because you were in an early water board program. And then in reference to a document citation for the wetland setback or distance change, to the best of my knowledge, the department has not changed the setback from wetlands. This is a range in here DFW is trying their hardest or trying to do their best to mimic or be aligned with what the water board's expectations are for setbacks. And so if staff finds that the project may be within the above stated setbacks, or staff does not know if the project is within the above stated setbacks, again, we're going to refer that project to Cdfw for additional review. So this isn't us stating that you have to be 50 feet or 150 feet away. This is our review is, can we determine whether or not the project is meeting this requirement? And if we can't determine that based on the materials we have in front of us, a referral is going to move forward. Some questions about Standard 8. Permanent infrastructure associated with cannabis cultivation is located outside of the 100-year floodplain. So the question that came up when we were presented Standard 8 last week was, agriculture is permitted in the 100-year floodplain. What are the restrictions for cannabis? So this is really associated with infrastructure, which could be hoop houses or greenhouses if you're cultivating in a structure. It might also be like your ag chemical storage or your processing facility, for example. We're really thinking permanent structures. Permanent infrastructure is not your outdoor cultivation, right? Where your canopy, outdoor cultivation canopy, that is not a permanent structure. So if we suspect that permanent structures are within the 100-year floodplain or encroaching on it, we would go ahead and refer your project to Fish and Wildlife for additional review. We have had Fish and Wildlife in at least one instance request that an applicant move infrastructure out of the floodplain. So a portion of the applicant's garden, which was a combination of cannabis and food, was in the floodplain. So DFW said, okay, can you kind of do a swap? Can you put the infrastructure portion outside of the floodplain and the non-infrastructure portion inside the floodplain? So they just literally kind of pulled up their hoops and moved them out of the floodplain and then moved their outdoor activities into the area that was in the floodplain. And then they had to move a shed because the shed was in the floodplain. So they just moved it to the other side of the garden. While incredibly inconvenient and potentially costly, depending on how your infrastructure is set up and the scale of the infrastructure impacted by this request, the first course of action is to see if we can figure out how to work with that project, the project's applicant or permit holder, to remedy any issues surrounding infrastructure in the floodplain. Okay. Some more performance standards. We're going to talk about number 9 next, right here. So questions about number 9. The project shall completely avoid impacts to oak woodlands and provide an adequate protection buffer between oak woodlands and project activities. So the MND does not state no impact, right? It states cannabis cultivation site will, to the maximum extent feasible, avoid or minimize its impact on environmentally sensitive areas, including oak woodlands and timber resources and 15% slopes and prime soils, okay? So why is this standard being applied that there will be no impact? So we're being asked, like, can we verify that there's no impact to oak woodlands? If the department staff cannot verify that there's no impact to oak woodlands, then we refer this out to DFW. And we use those mapping tools. One of them has a layer that we can turn on that shows oak woodlands in relationship to Mendocino County and your project. So if, your project is well outside of that layer, we just move forward with our review process. If it looks like it's within the layer, we're going to say, no, we can't verify that they've avoided impacts to oak woodlands. And so we'll refer the project out. And then Cdfw will determine if the project poses impacts to oak woodlands and if there needs to be any adjustment to that project to ensure that that project results in less than significant impacts, right, to the oak woodland area here. So while this language is fairly zero tolerance, the question is to us. our department staff, can the department verify that there's no impacts? Because the goal isn't to get to no impacts, it's to get to at least less than significant impacts. So they're asking us, can you tell us that there's no impacts? And if we say, well, maybe, but we don't know, or we say no, then DFW is going to do their review and may have recommendations to ensure that that project results in less than significant impacts to that Oak Woodland area. All right, moving forward, and hopefully we're wrapping it up, which is good timing for this slide. So wrapping up the review process. So as I mentioned, if we've checked any of those performance standard boxes, no or unknown, we're going to package your project for referral to California Department of Fish and Wildlife. And what we'll be putting into that referral is the completed Exhibit A checklist, AKA performance standard checklist, your sensitive species habitat questionnaire, and your contiguous expansion affidavit if you've submitted one, your cultivation operations plan, your site plan, your lake or streambed alteration agreement paperwork, and your water board notice of applicability and any water monitoring report that the most recent report we have on file. So all of that gets packaged up, and this is where we come back to alignment, right? A cultivation and operations plan that has water sources on it that aren't on the site plan makes it not only hard for our review, but also is going to impede California Department of Fish and Wildlife's review. So just an example of why we're emphasizing alignment, right, amongst the materials and between local and state activities or permit and license. So this is really important that we have alignment so that it's a streamlined review for both the department and for CDFW if the review moves forward or is referred to CDFW. So if your project is referred to CDFW, department staff will notify you and your agent that we're sending it out for referral. And so a question came up about what's the difference between approximately 30 days and some time. Right? I don't know what some time means or a little bit of time means, but I can say that CDFW is supposed to return their comments to us within 30 days of us sending the referral to them. So it does take approximately 30 days for CDFW to conduct the review, depending on how backlogged they are. Sometimes we get them back quicker, much quicker. Sometimes it takes the full 30 days. So this is why we're saying approximately 30 days. But when the comments are returned to the department staff has a little bit of work to do to make sure that all of those materials are packaged that we sent to CDFW. And that they are also presented with the comments, and then they are sent as a packet to the applicant and their agent so that they can address any comments or suggestions that DFW makes to ensure that that project will result in less than significant impacts and that all of these performance standards are met. So we send all of that material back to the applicant and the agent. And if what you receive in that comment letter, that initial comment letter from CDFW, is that your project will result in less than significant impacts, that's great. You are done with your sensitive species habitat review, and you can use the information in that packet we send you to work on your Appendix G, specifically the biological review section, but there may be additional sections that your Appendix G, your sensitive species habitat review materials might address, right? Hydrology is possibly one of them. And it's a little bit hard to provide examples because I haven't combed through enough sensitive species habitat review to say, and then had that paired with the Appendix G to say, if it looks like this, you might want to include it over here in this Appendix G like that. But again, as we have these technical assistance meetings coming up, this will be a great opportunity to ask specifically these questions and any other questions related to your application. But if you're, looking at this SSHR material and you're looking at your Appendix G and you're like, I don't understand how to tie these together, please make a technical assistance appointment with us when we open up those dates, and let's address that question. As you know, we'll have all of the agencies there, or agency representatives, and we can address that question specifically in those technical assistance meetings, and the response will be specific to your project, which is really going to be important in helping clarify here. Okay, so if you get comments back from DFW that are asking you to make adjustments, it's really the applicant's responsibility to address those comments. CDFW may request additional materials such as a biological study. They may also request an inspection. So this is really common if they don't know for sure, or they want to verify setbacks, distance from a floodplain, then they're like, okay, let's go out and measure it. Right? So they might request a site visit to go out and measure it. So the CDFW final comments and the materials provided in the referral packet should be included in the Appendix G checklist. So we can talk about that more, as I mentioned, in technical assistance meetings, and we can answer specifics to your project in those meetings. All right, let's do some public comment. I've got a couple hands raised, so I'm just going to remind folks, if you want to have a verbal comment opportunity or a question, please do raise your hand. You can use the raise hand feature in the toolbar if you're using the Zoom app. If you're on the phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand. And so we're going to do a couple of questions that are in the Q&A feature. I just want to take a look at them. There's about 16 questions in the Q&A feature. Quick question I do want to address, not on this topic, portal corrections. So we were told, we did tell everyone that we thought we would have them completed by the end of May. We're running behind on those. What happened and how we ended up behind on those is we're still trying to work through renewals that were already assigned to either Diana, Gabriella, or Nick. So those three have some work on their plates that I would like them to wrap up and not set aside before they start corrections portals reviews, excuse me for the frog in my throat. So that set us a little bit behind. And then with new staff, we've been training new staff over the course of the last couple of weeks to be prepared to conduct these reviews. That includes Nina and Angie, Casey and David, who started this week, and Tara. So we are amidst reviews right now. And I'm hoping we'll have them wrapped up in the next week or so. But we are working through them. And so just with so much going on, new staff coming in, we did training all together with that new staff, and now we're moving forward with those reviews. Okay, let's see. Will the scheduling for technical assistance be for MCD in general only? Besides the stringing in of other agencies as needed, which is wonderful, or will there be a way to make appointments for specific topics, I think is what the question is here, not optics, or specific topics with MCD and other agencies, including MCD related programs such as SSHR, LSA, Equity, Appendix G. We will all be present at the same time. Some of us will be in person, right, as far as staff is concerned from the relevant agencies or the participating agencies. Some staff might be remoted in. So when you make an appointment for technical assistance, you're going to get all of us, whether you want all of us or not, right? So you're going to get the whole gamut of agency folks. We're all going to be available at the same time for that appointment to answer any of all of your questions, right? Whether it's a DFW question, a water board question, a DCC question, or a MCD question. And so if you come to your meeting and you just have questions for CDFW, MCD staff will be learning a lot, right? We'll be sitting there, we'll be available to offer help or answer questions specific to your project. We'll have access to all of your application materials. So if you get down a rabbit hole of a question with California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and all of a sudden you're like, man, I don't know what my last site plan, I didn't bring it. We'll be able to open it up and have that conversation and look at it together, right? So you're going to get all of us right? Whether you're coming in to just ask equity questions or not, we're all going to be available for that entirety of that meeting. So I just wanted to make sure folks have a little background on what we're planning here. And then we do need to go to folks who are calling in. So let's go ahead and focus on getting to some verbal comments, because I know last time these ran really long. So we're going to hear first from Hannah Nelson, followed by Chantal, and then Julia Carrera. So Hannah, give me just a minute to get out of this presentation here. Sorry that I lost my participant list. There we go. Let me get the timer up. There we go. Okay, so Hannah, please, you can go ahead and start your question or your comment.
Thank you, Kristen. And I just want to say this is excellent and really appreciate you going back and answering questions that weren't answered before. I think it's really effective. So thank you very much. On the contiguous expansion issue, it seems that it's a performance standard, and maybe even this lumps together with the date of the MND, as well as the setbacks and whether or not they're this or that or the other thing with respect to grandfathered in. Each of those are performance standards which, if they are met, and therefore what is being asked of for the SSHR meets the actual legal standard as opposed to something higher, then the applicant, if they meet that performance standard to the legal standard rather than something higher, would in fact save some time with their SSHR review. In other words, it might not have to be referred to Cdfw if it's clear that it meets the legal standard. Mm-hmm. So I guess I'm asking if you can put some effort into working with Cdfw. And by the way, it was Cdfw and County Council who both acknowledged that potentially the correct date was 1/1/16. But I think that the alignment of those standards in terms of what staff is reviewing to determine if a renewal is needed is would save time in process, which of course is totally of the essence here. So that's more of a comment and a request. With respect to the 30 days SSHR approximately, what happens if Cdfw doesn't get back in 30 days? Is there some other provision that kicks in? And let's see, I had something else, but I'm out of time. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Hannah. I'm going to go ahead and stop this gosh darn timer. Okay, so thank you for the comments about the CEA performance standard and the dates. I got a lot of stuff going on with County Council, the department does right now. We're buried. But I think this is a question we can pose, and we can pose with DFW. I don't know that the date change impacts our reviews at all. I don't see how it would streamline or any of our reviews. The 30-day performance standard component, referral component is written into the ordinance. So if we do send a referral packet to DFW and they haven't commented or responded to us within 30 days of that send date, we do have the ability to assume, right, that they consider the project to have less than significant impacts. That is an assumption and may or may not benefit the applicant to move forward with a less than significant impact assumption based on the fact that 30 days lapsed. We do, in the past, we have gently pressed as we've gotten close to that 30-day mark, just saying hey, this one's ready. Are you guys going to bring this back, in the timeline? We haven't had, to the best of my knowledge, DFW take longer than 30 days. They've been pretty gosh darn on it. So I just think there's potentially some risk. I think it's probably up to the applicant too. So if we haven't received a response back in 30 days, we can also ping that applicant and be like, hey, technically they didn't respond, so you can technically assume, but do you want the response? Like because the response really is going to be beneficial to showing your homework in that Appendix G, right? Showing the homework that the county did the complete review of the performance standards and that the project meets all of those performance standards. So, yes, it can proceed if they don't come back. It could pose some risk to the applicant to potentially not wait an extra few days, but we do check in with DFW if we're coming up to that 30-day marker to be like, hey, come on, you're gonna get this back to us. So hopefully we won't have to deal with some of those. As far as the question about the setbacks, right? And we are reviewing all of the materials, right? We're reviewing the site plans, we're reviewing the NOA materials, the water board materials that we have on hand. So if we see something that in there like explicitly says, grandfathered this location at 50 feet or 48 feet, right? This may be a better example. Then we're going to say that they meet the performance standard because according to the water board, you're meeting the performance standard. So staff is reviewing all of these components, and it's when they're outside of what's in the stated materials. If there is some sort of grandfathering, we would recognize that. Okay, we're going to go to Chantal, followed by Julia, and then Monique Ramirez. So Chantal, you should be able to unmute your device and start your question or comment.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Kristen. Thanks so much. Again, I echo what Hannah said. This is really fantastic. It's refreshing to go back over some questions that were maybe partially answered or that are complex, and just having another look over at them is really helpful. So thank you for putting time into this type of presentation. I have a comment more than a question. Again, it's regarding grandfathering. With one applicant or one person who went through the sensitive species and habitat review and the referral to CDFW, we then met with CDFW, two different representatives. They raised the question about the grandfathering. They were not that they were not familiar with what the setbacks were supposed to be, but my comment is asking for the cannabis department to continue to help CDFW be, I guess it's to be clear as far as they're applying a regional water board, now became state water board cannabis general order setback length. And I'm concerned about the interagency communication, that it's getting triggered by a county level review, then sent to CDFW, and CDFW is now doing the review as to whether or not a water board regulation is accurately being claimed as applicable in that situation, such as we qualify for the grandfathering, therefore XYZ thing can stay where it is. It could not stay there if they were not enrolled prior to the date when the regional board order folded over into the state board order. So this is a super technical one, and I don't have it phrased. I'm not phrasing it excellently right now, but just reading the question that the county with CDFW and the water board, that triangulation concerns me. And the last part, I'll just ask a question. Is there any other materials that we as consultants or applicants can help to prepare to demonstrate that the performance standards are met? Are there other things that we can show on site plans that would help this review process, especially at the county's initial level of review, go more quickly, efficiently, and with greater clarity? Thank you.
All right, thanks for that. Site plans are really huge, to be honest with you. So we really wanted to do updates to the site plan guidance before the 2021 portal. And we just did not get those materials out until it was too close to opening that portal. And it created a lot of stress with folks. But just so everyone knows, the ordinance does require waterways to be identified on the site plan and those setbacks. And so we often come back and ask for them, but proactively, man, if folks do put those all waterways that are on their property, whether they're seasonal or year-round, and the setbacks, especially if you are in a grandfathering situation and you have setbacks that were established when you were part of the pilot program with the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board. That right there is so helpful for our reviewers, because we can look at that material, we can line it up with what's in, right, that water board document, that NOA document. So really, the more you can help us, the more you can get on your site plan as far as waterways and the buffer zones for those waterways, man, that is really one of the most crucial ways or best ways to streamline our review here internally for the sensitive species habitat review and address those setback variations especially. And so I'm probably not answering all of your question, Chantal. It was a pretty robust question. But I'm imagining that we'll see you at technical assistance meetings and that we'll have more time as a group to talk about some of these issues. So our next caller is going to be Julia Carrera, followed by Monique Ramirez. And so if you want to get in the queue for asking a question or making a comment, really, we encourage you to raise your hand. Otherwise, we can't identify you. Great. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Julia, followed by Monique, and then Michelle. So Julia, you should be able to unmute your device, ask your question, or present your comment.
Thank you, Kristen, very much. Fabulous meeting. Thank you for doing CEQA again and again. I have 6 quick questions, but I'm going to start with Chantel and Hannah's issue. First one being Cdfw referral. Traditional CEQA allows approval if Cdfw does not respond within 30 days. Cdfw knows that. I'm not sure why would we go outside of, or what legal authority there is to go outside of traditional 30-day noticing. So I'd like to understand that more. It doesn't have to be answered today. Regarding performance standards and the setbacks, couldn't it be that the applicants that were in the pilot program with the Regional Water Board provide either their original application or their original NA in the documentation so that we can streamline that in addition to the mapping? But that might be a simple way to address what Chantel was speaking of. In regards to state verification, if the county's made an error in a verification, how do we rectify that error? And then in regards to standard number 6, this creates a substantial workload for Cdfw. I have grave concern about their staffing and whether they'll be able to address all of this. How can we streamline it? I think part of that might be this 30-day situation. And then last, since the applicant has to respond directly to Cdfw when there's a referral, why can't Cdfw directly give them the referral response originally? And I believe I have one more, but I'm going to have to ask it later because I don't see it here. Thank you.
Okay, great. Let's go ahead and see if we can knock some of these off. Okay. So the department is not going outside of the 30-day clause that's in the ordinance, right? What I am saying here is that, everyone, including the department, has the right to assume that no response after 30 days from Cdfw gives you the right to assume that the project is considered to be or to result in less than significant impacts. The caveat I put on it is that does the applicant really want that response from Cdfw? So we can either work with the applicant to assume that, right, it's a less than significant impact response under no response, or if the applicant wishes, we can press Cdfw to get the comments back, right? So that's all I'm saying there. The state verification error, I have an email coming to you about that error. And if you believe that your applicant yourself or some other permit holder has an incorrect status on our workbooks that we share with the state, please do email cannabisprogram@mendocinocounty.org and make sure you include the AG number, the status that DCC has told you that that AG number is associated with that AG number and the status that you as the applicant or the agent believes that that AG number has. And we'll re-review it and get back to you. And so staffing, you know, when we're talking about staffing at CDFW, the initial staffing was a retiree that had come back part-time to work with us on these referrals. They have now staffed at least one additional full-time person just for these reviews. So we have our own, so to speak, full-time staff person that's dedicated to conducting these reviews with Mendocino County. I think we're going to be fine with that, having, you know, 1.5 staff persons to do these. They're doing nothing else. So when there's referrals, that's what they're tasked with. When there's no referrals on deck, DFW probably utilizes them on other projects. But we are, as a county, paying for the DFW reviews. So we're expecting to have, I would say, priority, right, from those staff persons we're paying for to conduct these reviews. And if for some reason the timelines are breaking down and more staffing is needed, we'll address that conversation with DFW should we need to cross that bridge. So we're going to go to Monique, followed by Michelle Schott, and then after that, we're going to go to future agenda items. So Monique, you should be able to unmute yourself and start your comment or question.
Good morning, Kristen. Thank you so much again for going back over all these other questions. That's so helpful. And it just shows that you are listening to the feedback of the community. And so I just want to acknowledge that this morning. I am also really excited to know that there's going to be technical assistance meetings happening throughout the county and that they're in person, similar to kind of like the satellite days that they used to do back when people were trying to get their applications just turned in. So I'm really grateful to know that that's happening and that there's going to be lots of support from the different agencies to help people navigate their questions and hopefully walk away with answers. One thing I'd like to recommend is just that we get a lot of public noticing prior so that people are aware of that happening. And I'm just really excited about that. And also, if you need support for an area in Covelo, I'm happy to connect you with our library commons, which has Wi-Fi. And I'm also curious if you're planning to try to coordinate so that all the appointments, like for Covelo, for instance, that you capture as many people so that it's efficient for everyone across the board. And so I just think getting that public noticing out to everyone sooner than later, even though you're not going to launch this until July, I think would be really helpful. And then I did have a question in the chat just regards to the Appendix G assigned planners, and you did respond to me via email, but I just want to make a request that if the reviewer of an Appendix G has already been assigned and now you're coming up for cannabis renewal for your permit, if those two people, or if that original planner could still be assigned to them, I think it would make the process go more efficiently. But one question I did have was about how you said Appendix G isn't going to be reviewed until September. But if someone has a renewal now and they've already submitted Appendix G, like I hope that they're not going to be put on hold until September for their renewal review. So if you could just clarify that, that'd be great. Thanks so much, Kristen.
Yeah, absolutely. And so thank you. We will take you up on some connecting to the Covelo Library. Nina is so happy. She's just like, oh my gosh, I need to know who. So please, if you would be so kind as to email us together with Covelo Library, we would be so very appreciative. Or send an email of contact information to Cannabis Program. It'd be really, really helpful. So with the technical assistance meetings, as soon as we have venues and dates for those venues, we will start emailing active AG applicants, permit holders, and their agents that we have on file, saying, hey, we've got these dates that we'll be offering appointments for technical assistance in these locations. Please consider signing up for an appointment with us. So this is why we're looking at kind of mid-July. We're hoping to, over the course of the next week or two, solidify our venues and our dates so that we can really start pushing out this appointment scheduling to the public. So pushing out the appointment scheduling opportunities to the AG holders, the active AG holders. So we are not going to hold your renewal until September, Mo. That's just not where we're at. We're going to process your renewal and the renewals that we have in the queue right now. And then it's really important that we get folks just really into compliance. Like, let's just knock some of these things out. And then we need to also internally do some robust training on how to review Appendix G. So we're putting those materials together. And this is why I really want to push until September to start doing Appendix G reviews. We got training that needs to happen, and it's going to take us some time to manage the items that are in the queue right now, and then get those trainings completed so that those reviews are consistent, right? So that's where we're at. I appreciate everyone being patient with us, but we are, we kind of have our hair on fire over here more days than not, so to speak, just with a lot going on. So we're trying to do our best to make sure that we're meeting all of the deadlines and keeping people moving forward without holding up, say, a renewal until September where we can get to an Appendix G. That's not what we want to do, nor is it what we plan to do. Okay, let's do another comment. So we have, I think it's Michelle Schott. You're going to be up next for comment, and then we're going to transition into future agenda items. So Michelle, you should be able to go ahead and unmute your device and start your comment or ask your question.
Okay, so I have a question. First is my comment. I'm going to strongly ask you to edit that slide that says the setback for wetland is 150 feet, because what happened for me is it triggered a call to the botanist who did the study that cost money to the client, and it created a big deal. Then I had to also interact with Fish and Wildlife. So to add that 100-foot setback would have eliminated that whole thing. I hope that's making sense to you. The other thing, so that's my comment. I just would encourage you to edit that so it's clear that there are 3 different setbacks. The second, my question is so for another client, the planner that had the Appendix G and our file left the department. So now what happens to that particular file? Does it get reassigned? What happens? That's it. Thank you.
All right, thanks for those. So I just want to say that with doing any edits to that checklist, it's a renegotiation with Fish and Wildlife in the county. So we just, our mandate, so to speak, pursuant to the MND is that the checklist and the policy around sensitive species habitat review is negotiated between the county and Department of Fish and Wildlife. So we can have that conversation about adding the 100-foot, but it really needs to happen between the department and Cdfw, and we would need them to agree on it before we would be amending or able to amend the Exhibit A checklist. So what happens to your Appendix G if it was assigned to Rob or Alora, and then Rob, your planner moved on to another department or, took a job and moved out of the cannabis department? So we have been combing through all of our previous planners' files and pulling out open projects, including Appendix Gs. And as we pull out those open projects, they go into the queue. We have this master project tracker, which is a really, sexy spreadsheet. So we have all of the projects that we have currently that need to be assigned for review, including projects that we peeled out of Alora and Rob's work product folders, and we put them into that assignment spreadsheet so that they can be assigned. And if you were working with Rob or Alora on a project, we're going through their emails and through their project folders, and we're trying to assign a rough date for when that project came in, so it will be reassigned to a new planner, theoretically in the order it was received, so to speak. So again, as I mentioned earlier, it puts you in front of the queue, say, then in front of the line from folks who submitted after, say, your review was started with Alora or Rob. At least that's the intention, and that's what we've been attempting to do so that you get reassigned in a timely fashion, go back to the end of the line, so to speak. Angie has been doing pretty amazing, thorough forensic restructuring of both Laura and Rob's workspace to make sure that folks get put into the queue in the order that we receive their materials. So that's what I've got there. Let's spend 10 minutes, 9 minutes technically, hearing from folks about future agenda items. And so I've got a few folks that have their hand raised for comment on future agenda items. I'm not going to answer questions in this stage of public comment. I'm sorry. We just are running out of time, and I want to make sure that we hear, what's working. Was this so effective that folks want to do some more of this type of presentation where we address questions that might have come up? We're just looking for some ideas about how to best serve our community as we're offering these Friday meetings. So no responses. I'm just going to take notes, and we're going to set the timer, and we're going to hear about future agenda items. We're going to go to Chantal, followed by Hannah Nelson, followed by Marie Lizzie. So Chantal, you should be able to go ahead and unmute your device and let us know what you think we should do in the future for these meetings.
Oh, this is a huge opportunity. 2 whole minutes, what should I say? So I'll pivot from making another comment. I would definitely advocate for any additional communication and clarification regarding the January 1/16 versus November 16 date that's used to trigger a whole different level of review. It impacts the Appendix G checklist, any sort of biological resources report that's being prepared, the sensitive species habitat review, just many things trigger off of that date. And it's amazing that still now it's 2022, we're still having this debate about what date should it be and who thinks it should be what date and why. And I would ask, a comment would be that of those that are referred to CDFW for the SSHR process, or basically, I guess it's also at the county's level of when you are doing the performance standard review, it still feels like even with these meetings, there's still a lack of transparency. And I understand that it's not intentional. It's also just how to manage the behemoth of a deal that you're dealing with. But we don't know yet who's at what stage, who's been referred to CDFW and when did CDFW respond to the county? And then eventually does the county respond to the AG holder? I've been going direct to CDFW and getting better information in a more timely way than I'm able to get it directly from the county themselves. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. I totally believe you that you're getting better information about the process and the timelines from CDFW. Our tracking in Trackit doesn't really give us this visibility to really be able to answer those questions that come in, like how many are in this position, how many are in that position, how many are, over the top, so to speak, and completed. We are reverting to spreadsheets a lot and looking at some solutions, but it's really, the department is not trying to hide the shell here or the ball in a shell game. We just don't have easily exportable data that really allows us to track how far along folks are in this application process. We've been setting up spreadsheets like mad, and it's not the preferable route. And I know I said I wasn't going to answer questions, but the transparency issue comes up a lot, or question comes up a lot. And we are looking at some solutions. I want to really reassure folks, but anyways, this is where we're at right now. So I'm going to go to Hannah and then Marie, and I promise I'll stop talking. So Hannah, you should be able to go ahead and unmute your device and leave a comment, please.
Thank you. 2 quick things on prior items with respect to the SSHR packaging. I think that may be a way to streamline it, as I think it was Julia that previously suggested that both the information to CDFW for the SSHR review, as well as the CDFW response, include the applicant directly so that everybody's in the same loop. That might help streamline some stuff rather than repackaging. There should be no need to change things. Also, in terms of exportable data, totally understand your frustration there. It's unfortunate that so much money has been assigned for updating of computer stuff, but it's still not feasible for you guys. I totally understand, but perhaps you can post the spreadsheets every week on the website. And then the future topics, one is modifications and advice as to how working farms that need to change things can have the best strategy to be accurate and up to date, save themselves money on modification fees, and also be aware of timing issues with respect to the review of their pending application. Renewals are easier to handle at that time, but the tension between keeping up to date and at the same time not screwing up the timing for the review of their application or their Appendix G, et cetera. So it'd be great to get some comprehensive advice. And I know that it's particular to cases, but maybe the department can come up with some general guidelines. And then the other future topic is perhaps a review of all the standards that staff is using for the review of the applications, so that the public can see transparently what's being used as the standards and feel comfortable about the consistency. Thank you.
All right, we are going to go to Marie Livesey, followed by Paul Hansberry and Susan Tibbin, followed by Julia Carrera, and then we'll be ending the meeting after Julia because we're going to run out of time here. So, Marie, you should be able to unmute your device and provide your suggestion for future agenda items.
Thank you, Kristen. I think last we spoke that currently the Cannabis Department was not approving budget requests for solar, and that you were talking about putting some kind of a questionnaire together and talking to the state. And I'm hoping that you will be giving an update on that. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Okay, little housekeeping. We will now go to Paul Hansberry and potentially Susan Tibbin. So Paul, if you want to start your comment and then let us know if Susan also has a comment, please.
Hi, good morning. I want to echo what everyone else is saying. This format is just great. I'm glad you're going back and answering questions because it was a source of frustration. Thank you very much. I want to raise the issue of transparency once again. You have the funding for computer upgrades and stuff. Why aren't we updating Track It and Cobblestone? Because even in the last LEAP meeting, Paula said that she couldn't tell where people were in Cobblestone because there's no transparency with the program. So people don't know where they are, how long it's going to take. Is there any way that we can possibly nudge the county to do that, or the department can request that that these programs get updated, because they were not designed for programs like this, especially with the grant program for where you have 200 applicants. They were more for onesie twosie kinds of positions. So is there any way that you could nudge the county to spend some of that money to help to improve the transparency within the program? And then Susan does have a comment she wants to ask.
Hello, good morning. This is Susan Tibbin. Kristen, the extra time that you're obviously taking to research the questions is just really deeply appreciated. So not only is the format fabulous, but also your willingness to dive a little deeper into some of the questions. And my comment is, would some of the grant money that's assigned to infrastructure at the county, to your office, for instance, be applicable to paying for upgrades to Trackit or Cobblestone? Because it might be painful initially, but I think in the long run, it would serve everyone. So just that suggestion. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you for that. Excuse me, my apologies. Let's see here. Quick housekeeping before we go to our last commenter, which will be Julia Carrera. So Julia, you should be able to unmute your device and leave your comment, please.
Thanks, Kristen. And I want to again say and acknowledge appreciation for you in really taking on the task of getting this clear, getting the information out. Kudos to you, Kristen. You've got a lot on your plate and you're doing, some great stuff lately. So thank you again very much. So 2 items for future agendas. One goes back to the thing that I forgot about in my original question, which is I'd like to see VegMod in a future agenda item. Specifically, if the performance standards are where this VegMod came up back in 2020, no one knew about that was participating in the program. And shouldn't that be applied from 2020 moving forward? Or if not, why it shouldn't? Those kinds of things, because there's a lot of issue right now around VegMod. No one knows where they stand. So maybe you could give us an update on that. When asked the supervisors about what's happening, they say they don't know and they're not getting answers. So some clarity around VegMod. And then my favorite topic, a mission statement. So, I know you said you could do a survey, but honestly, and I realize that you've told people that, that's not the priority. And I understand you've got a lot on your plate. But I really think that would be very helpful as far as getting parameters to the applicants and the program staff, and bring a little more clarity so that the applicants can say, well, this is the mission statement. And yes, in fact, it's meeting it. So I'm not going to ask any questions, and it might end up saving you time in the long run. So mission statement, mission statement, mission statement. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Julia. Let's go ahead and do some quick housekeeping. I do want to address the comment or the question quickly regarding Trackit and Cobblestone. So in the local jurisdiction assistance grant program budget, we do have a lot of funds set aside for customizations and development of Trackit. We are looking at those costs and how much we can modify Trackit into trying to do what we hope it will do. And we're also looking at other options. So we are planning to address this, but for right now, we're still in some research and development phase on that. And the reason why Paula stated that she doesn't have Cobblestone is not transparent to her is because parties outside of county staff do not have access to Cobblestone. So Elevate Impact Minot, that entire team has no ability to log into Cobblestone and see into it. Only county staff does. So this is part of what can be challenging even about Trackit, right? So we don't have, only county staff has access to the full features of Trackit. So, we're looking at a multitude of different solutions to addressing these issues. And right now, that's my response as to why it is the way it is, and what Paula's comment meant about transparency is that she literally cannot access Cobblestone to see where someone is in that process of contract review in the county. So with that said, we're at 10:04. A little bit over today, but thank you so much everyone for joining. We'll review questions, we'll review future agenda item suggestions, and we'll see if we can pick up some of those questions from previous agenda items. It looks like folks still want to talk about them more in the future, and do some more presentations like this that really address outstanding questions that we have not had a chance to come back to. So with that said, I think we should go ahead and adjourn. I hope you all have a fabulous weekend. And we'll be back here on Friday next week. So we'll talk to you then, if not sooner. Take care, everyone.